But football without fans is nothing. It can be the greatest game in the world. If there are no people there to watch it, it becomes nothing.
Johnston. And a goal by Johnston. That makes it 2 by him.
We were magnificent. Magnificent.
Larson. Oh, he's in. Henrik Larsson. That is sensational. Nakamura.
The game is over. The Rebels have won.
He's done it! Jarman's put it in, and without a doubt, the European Cup is on its way.
We'll never stop. We'll stop at half time, and we'll stop at the end of the game when we celebrate.
Evening, boys and girls. Welcome to the show. You're with me, Paddy and McGinty tonight. What's happening, McGinty?
Nothing much, man. Here we've got a little debate on our hands tonight, Paddy.
Aye, to anybody that's tuning in so far, obviously me and Gav done a massive, almost 2 hour long episode after the game, epic episode, mate, against after the epic win against Dundee. So anybody wants to listen to us talking about Dundee, jump back and have a listen to that. But
I hope you talked about Celtic, not just Dundee.
The Dundee game. Dundee. Well, it's a Celtic podcast. I didn't really think I'd be kind of.
I don't know.
Plug Celtic, you know what I mean?
I'm the one wearing red and blue on a Celtic podcast, so people get confused.
Sorry,
Barcelona, guys. Barcelona.
That's your fashion choice. That's up to you. Listen, we're going to have a wee, we're going to have a wee change tonight. So usually every Tuesday we do our weekly roundup and we talk all things Celtic. But as I say, Gav and I pretty much covered everything on Sunday there. So we're going to have a wee change tonight, and we are going to go for our best unsung hero 11. So, McGinty, do you want to just explain to the viewers your take on an unsung hero?
Yeah, I was going to say, because we seem to be in a little bit of a debate between ourselves of what actually constitutes as an unsung hero. For me, it is somebody who did something that made a difference, truly made a difference to the club, but didn't get the appreciation at the time or after since, sort of thing. For me, I know we're going to get debated about one position in particular straight away. And for me, just doing your job is not good enough to be an unsung hero is all I'm starting this off with.
Right, so just McGinty's alluding to a conversation that him and I have been having for the last couple of weeks because we've been desperate to come and do this episode of the Unsung Heroes 11. And it's probably good that if you're tuning in, you tune in early because there's one position right away. It's me and McGinty's going to be at it like a fucking pair of cats or something. There's Davey Boy on, all right. How you doing, mate? Evening, Paddy and McGinty. The game is over. The Rebels have won versus the big house must be open, and that is the ball. That's the ball.
I love that. A little bit of Stone Cold thrown in there as well.
No, absolutely. Smashing. Cooking with Chef Di. Evening, fellas. How you doing, buddy? Paul Burrow. See you, good boy. Hail. And yourself, mate.
Hail, Paul.
Jamie Young, how you doing, Paul? So how would you like to kick this one off then? Anthony?
Well, do we get straight into it? Do we just start goalkeeper and go for it? That's where it's going to get heated. Or do we build it
in? Well, I know who my pick is. I'm sure you know who your pick is. So I'm interested to hear who your pick is.
I think we should hear yours first.
No. I think we should get it out of the way, buddy. Let's just hear who yours.
As I say, for me, I'm going with a flat 4-4-2 because over the years, and I'm picking only players that I've seen play personally in the last kind of 20, 25 years. I'm going for a flat 4-4-2 because it's just easier to make a formation out of it rather than the 3-5-2s or the 4-2-3-1s. So I'm going to start at the start with the goalkeeper. And for me, this is not one of the big goalkeepers. This is not somebody who had clean sheet records. This is not anybody who's, won his individual games per se. This is somebody who had been at the club, I think it was for 6 years, and almost every time he came into this team, he was steady, he was confident, he didn't overly let us down. He played 28 league games only over 6 years at Celtic in goals. Of those 28 games, he only lost 3 and he only drew 5. So that's 20 wins out of 28 in the league. For me, as a backup goalkeeper, that's somebody who's reliable enough for that position. For backup, he's not letting you down too often. He played 3 games in Europa where we got no defeats. I think it was 2 wins and a draw, perhaps, but there's no defeats in the Europa League when he played. This man, 6 years, he got 4 league titles with us. He was never the best keeper. He was never going to be a number 1, but he was steady as hell. And he came in and he came in and done a good job. And he helped win his league titles when he needed to come into the team. And for that reason, Lucas Zaluska is my unsung hero in goals. I knew you weren't going to be impressed.
Aye. What do you want to say that? Like?
That's what I've explained it.
Aye, well, listen, as a backup, he was decent. I think.
Think of the backups we've had
before
and after who have let us down.
I remember around about the time that we signed Zaluska. So obviously Zaluska was playing for Dundee United when Boruc was a goal. Obviously there's that famous moment where Boruc scored the penalty.
Aye.
And I think
off the bar.
I think around about that time you're maybe talking goalkeepers like Mark Brown would have been the backup.
I think he was the backup just beforehand, yeah.
Like maybe Scott Fox as well, guys like that. So I do.
Fox, aye.
I do remember that when we signed Zaluska, I thought, that's a decent signing, and you were hoping it was going to be somebody that kind of went and rivaled Boruc, but as we know, it wasn't. But I do remember as well, when Zaluska finally started to get game time. I think he played in that infamous 4-0 drubbing against St Mirren, the one that Tony Mowbray basically
could have been one of his races.
I'm sure he did, and I think that was around about the time where people were clamouring for him to get the first team game, and he never really stepped up to the plate.
We had. I think if you remember back to those times, I think you're probably quite right, because you're thinking how bad that season was, that we were crying out for anybody to come in, just change up. The same way as football fans do all the time. When you're on a bad run and you're seeing the same faces week in, week out, you want something to change. You want somebody to come in just to rejuvenate something, just give it a lease of life or something. Kevin, for me that's almost the prime definition of an unsung hero. Somebody who does the job. He's not spectacular. He's not doing marvelous. He's like, I'm so close to picking David Marshall, but he's not unsung because he's praised with that Barcelona performance. And yeah, Marshall should have got more game time, I think, and we should have built a team with him in it for years to come. And obviously the last few years we've looked towards getting him in before we brought in Fraser Forster and Joe Hart most recently. But for me, Zaluska definitely, for me, is my pick of goalkeepers, because I certainly could not pick the guy that you're about to mention.
By the way, what's the crack tonight? Am I getting double teamed with the El Clasico, guys?
You would think there's a match on at some point.
Morning, Gavin. How are you?
Aye, morning to you, Paddy. Are you in Australia right now or something?
What's that, mate?
Are you in Australia right now or something?
No, it's just because you've turned up late, mate.
Nice of you to show up.
If you've missed the chat there, Gav, Gav, Unsung Heroes 11, McGinty, right after the bat with his goalkeeper, he's picked
Lucas Zaluska.
The reserve goalkeeper?
The reserve goalkeeper who played only a total of 28 league games, but he won 20 games, only lost 3. He was steady and a confident backup goalkeeper, won 4 league titles over the 6 years he was with us. He was reliable as a backup goalkeeper. He never maybe saved us a league title. He never maybe overly won us one with heroics, but he came in when needed to, when he needed to cover injuries and stuff, and he was reliable. For me, he helped us throughout that kind of tenure.
Do you know what? I'm going to be very diplomatic, because I probably might not be soon. But I think that's... I can see your logic behind that, but for me, I think
I think Tony Warner might have made a bigger impact than Zaluska.
Tony Warner was in my thinking, along with David Marshall, but yeah, inevitably I have to go with somebody who's got the league titles to back it up.
I think the best thing that Zaluska did was try and attack Paul Payton. but even though he ended up with a black eye.
Well, there's always a debate there as well, especially when it comes to Mark Wilson. His tuppence.
There's who is it in the comments? Alan Woods, your boy Woodsy. Alan McKnight stepped in last minute for a big packet in 16th Cup final 88. Yep.
I think Alan's shown his age there.
Right.
Definitely an older brain than mine.
Right, here's one for you, McGinty. Just run it over again to Davey boy. Davey, I'm not sure about
Davey,
the parameters of the topic.
I think the parameters are going to be kind of shifted a few times throughout this conversation. But for me, the parameters is an unsung hero somebody who's done a good job for us, done a good turn, and not so much without them, we wouldn't have won things, but they never let us down. They've done well for the club, but they just haven't had the praise and the adulation that they probably deserved or could have got.
I think you're really scraping the barrel with Zaliska. A reserve goalkeeper, but fair enough, man.
Mate, the stats are backing it up that he'd done a good job for what he was.
Talking about scraping the barrel, Alan Woods is having a go at Gav already. Gav, Real Madrid.
Real Madrid.
Christ, you'll have a Chelsea or Hamburg top on next. Yes. He's almost like it was almost like the token Tory as your Gav.
Swiftly moving on, Paddy.
You call me a Tory? You wash your mouth out.
Called you what?
A Tory?
A token Tory. We go crown fucking Real Madrid top one.
Aye. Look, aye. To be honest, aye. Send the flag. I'll take it.
Right. Here we go. This is the one that we were hoping it's going to fucking spark off with a bit of debate. Right.
I can't believe I'm going to let you say this.
Yeah, fucking right, I'm going to say it. My goalkeeper, guys, is Craig Gordon.
Yeah, I'm with Paddy on that one.
For me, that he just
right,
tell me why he makes that parameter.
Pipe up, let me finish. Right, Craig Gordon, and by the way, you can't have a go at him, Mr. McGinty. Do you want to know why? Because his middle name's Anthony, same as yours, as your first name. Fuck. So have a bit of respect for the Anthonys. Right, so Craig Gordon, right now, I'm just going to get this out here at the start. Towards the end of his career, I wanted to rid of him. I thought he was there for too long. I thought we should have moved on. But when he came in, bearing in mind that he'd been out for 2 years, hadn't played football for 2 years, got him for nothing. He came in after the back of Forster leaving. Now, Forster at that point had established himself as one of the best goalkeepers in the UK. He had performed heroics. Now, he was a hero. Big Fraser Forster for us, right? One of the best goalkeepers we'd ever had. He set the records for clean sheets as a Celtic goalkeeper, right? So we lost Fraser Forster and we'd already lined up Craig Gordon to come in. Now, he's obviously replaced Forster, sorry. When that started off, the first half of that season, Craig Gordon was pulling off some superb saves. Absolutely no question about it. Some of the saves were world class. They were defying how he managed to make these saves. Now, for a guy that was making saves, if you're making saves, then you're stopping a goal. So you're part of winning. You are actively a part of helping your team to win.
Yes, 100%. Now, how many games in Europe did he? No.
You wait to have your turn. Scottish Writers Player of the Year. His first season beginning. Right, the writers say that he was the Player of the Year. When Rodgers came in, that was off the back of a wee bit of downward curve under Dyer's reign, but everybody was in the same boat. When Rodgers came in, he tried to turn the goalkeeping position into a position where the goalkeepers played the ball forward with their feet, like a passing goalkeeper.
So play football.
What do you call it?
Sweeper keeper.
Sweeper keeper, aye, something like that. He brought in Doris de Vries, right, because he was the best goalkeeper he'd ever seen with his feet. And it turns out that might have been the case, but the guy had prawn crackers for wrists, right? He couldn't fucking catch a ball. He was like Barkas of a couple of years ago. So Craig Gordon had been shunted out because he couldn't play with the ball at his feet. They brought in a guy to replace him who could play with the ball at his feet. And then they had to bring him back. And he ended up fucking solidifying the number one spot again. He ended up an integral part of the team, making great save after great save. And it ended up to the point where Chelsea were trying to buy him for £3 million. Right?
And we were mugs not to sell him.
Well, possibly, I think at that time as well, you know, it was a decent money to get back from him. But I think at points, Craig Gordon was sensational and goals. Right now, obviously, there is many a point where he was a fucking disaster. I.e., with the ball at his feet, he made some absolute howlers. But do you know what? What keeper hasn't done that? Manuel Neuer's fucking fumbled the most ridiculous shots you've ever seen. So is Schmeichel, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? This guy was part of winning games. And he was part of 5 league trophies, 2 Scottish Cups, and 5 League Cups. You know, that's no a mean feat for a guy that came back for the brink of retiring through injury. So
for me, all credit to Craig Gordon for coming back from that injury and getting himself into the first team. By the way,
Megan, just before I forget, see, one of the problems with Gordon kind of passing the ball out under Rodgers when it started to escalate and it started to get really bad. Found a quote for Craig Gordon, and he said that Rodgers actively told him to play out to a space even if a player wasn't there.
I think that says more about Rodgers than it does about Gordon's ability to be a
I know. But if you've got a guy that isn't comfortable playing with the ball at his feet, and you've got a manager trying to tell him to play with the ball at his feet, you can understand
which I think is why you've seen Doris de Vries coming in and flopping massively to the point where he had to return to Craig Gordon, who he originally wasn't that happy with for whatever reasons. Was it because he's not good with the ball at his feet? Yeah, primarily. So yeah, I totally agree with him that if he's getting asked to play the ball into a space, there's no play just because to play it into a space, it's a bit defunct. But that's more on Rodgers. For me, Craig Gordon was a quality goalkeeper in his prime. Mm-hmm. At Celtic, for me, he did not do that remotely enough, and he let us down in the moments when we really needed him more than anything else. His penalty saving stats were horrendous.
Yes, it was
to the point of I think he only saved 1, if any.
Order! McGinty, when would you say was his peak in his career?
His peak in his career was when he's at Hearts and he got his move to Sunderland. After that, he got his injuries downhill. His Celtic career was not his peak performance-wise. He was a much better keeper 10 years before. He was not at his peak at Celtic.
He was a young, rough goalkeeper.
He was an up-and-coming, high-potential, superb young keeper at the time.
Do you remember the fumble for McManus's last-minute winner at Tynecastle?
You're going back. Aye. But
Craig Gordon was one of the best goalkeepers that we've ever had at Celtic at stages.
Not enough, and he let us down more often than not. The fact that he let us down so much, especially in big games in Europe.
But you're just focused on the negatives.
Not an unsung hero for me. Of course, you have to focus on the negatives. We're talking about unsung heroes. You can't have an unsung hero who's...
Well, that's exactly my point. That's why I'm saying he's an unsung hero. Now, as I say at the end, he wasn't exactly a favourite of mine, but the same as a lot of players that play for Celtic, people just focus on the negatives. They focus on the poor parts of their play, and everything good that they've done before that just gets completely forgot about. And I'm guilty of that as well with some players. And some players I'm going to try and redeem myself with them later on.
McGinty, do you think there's any type of prejudice that's going into your argument? Because we know from day dot that he was never a Celtic man. Okay, fair enough.
No, I'd quite happily let you kind of continue if you want to, but I've heard that argument many times. You see it on the social media and on the online forums and stuff. People attribute that quite quickly, and it's similar to the wee Gordon Strachan debate, where a lot of Celtic fans they don't dislike his time at Celtic, and we obviously appreciate last 16 twice and all the rest of it, won us the league titles and stuff. Wee Gordon Strachan on paper and as a tenure at Celtic was a success. There's no doubt about it. But there's plenty of Celtic fans who didn't enjoy the football under him, that saw a regression in ability and style over the 4 years. And a lot of people who try to defend Gordon Strachan are similar when they try to defend Gordon, where it's not so much defending the person themselves, but actually try to twist and attack what the other person's saying. So when I say Craig Gordon not as good as he's made out to be, and not an unsung hero sort of thing, the go-to line sometimes, I'm not saying this is what you used to, I was saying here exactly, obviously playing devil's advocate, is that, oh, you're just saying that because Gordon's a Hearts man and was never a Celtic man, or you're just saying that because Gordon Strachan, and as I was saying, used to aren't, but other people do. But some people say, oh, Gordon Strachan, you just don't like him because he was never a Celtic man, he's an Aberdeen man. For me, that doesn't make a difference. There's been so many people who have played and managed at Celtic who have been players and fans of them.
I get your point. Okay, so let me ask it another way, a different kind of reason why you're opposed to Gordon. Celtic were very, very successful during this time at Parkhead. How did he not play a part in that success? Would you say that he wasn't a big factor in that success? Do you think we could have played anybody at all in goals?
Now, I'd be a hypocrite if I says that's my thinking, because obviously Zaluska I've just picked as a backup goalkeeper who I've used a stat as he was here, won 4 league titles with as a backup goalkeeper as a point of saying he's a steady and reliable backup. So I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I said that the titles and all the rest of it. For Gordon, for me, it's just that he let us down more often than not. For me, he let us down in the big games, especially in Europe. I know that you can hark to 1 or 2 games at Inter Milan and stuff like that where he played well, but he always, for me, let us down when we really needed a keeper to pull us. I mean, we saw it with Fraser Forster in the Rangers. Was it the cup final game in December when Fraser Forster was in? He won us that game by being Fraser Forster, and he's done that previously when he was at Celtic in his first stint. Joe Hart has won us games in the early part of the season. I can't really remember Craig Gordon winning us a game from the back.
But
he's made some great saves.
But you can remember Lucas Zaluska.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I'd be a hypocrite to say that, league titles gets you that unsung hero accolade for me, because, or doesn't get you sort of thing. Because obviously Zaluska, I'm claiming won the 4 league titles whilst he's here, and that should be accredited to him as a backup goalkeeper. Zaluska never won us games, big games, but he never let us down, is what Zaluska did. And as a backup goalkeeper, because that's all he ever was, and I'm judging him on his ability as a backup goalkeeper, Zaluska was a reliable and favourable backup goalkeeper. He did his job superbly as a backup goalkeeper. He was never signed as number 1.
So just on that point there, right, I'm going to bring up a couple of comments and tie in with that as well. Davey boy, Gordon pulled off numerous world-class saves for us. Unsung hero to me is a player who either takes a lot of shit for not being somebody else, or one who went under the radar without being flash. Kevin 14, I think Gordon got the praise he deserved. He has his place as an invincible. Big Rab took way more stick than Gordon. Right, see your last comment there, McGinty. You were talking about the player not being signed as a number 1. Neither was Craig Gordon. Craig Gordon was brought in as a
Craig Gordon was.
No, he was not.
Gordon was there to replace Fraser Forster.
No, he wasn't.
Who else was on our books at the time?
Right. No, never mind that. Do you honestly think that the Celtic supporters would have accepted selling Fraser Forster for £12 million to Southampton, as I say, after breaking numerous clean sheet records, and replacing him with a guy who hadn't played football for 2 years?
Aye.
No.
Celtic fans wouldn't want to accept that. We do not want to accept that. But you can't deny that it's literally been our policy as a transfer for over a decade. We buy in cheap, low / free, and we sell for high. And when we sell for high, we never replace with like for like value. We go for the next either cheap option, something to prove. Again, Sinclair, okay, was 4 million, but he was coming in as a high profile player, something to prove. Craig Gordon, down on his luck, back from injury, needs to come in and prove himself. They're the experience that you're bringing in. Opposite to that, you're bringing in young players at a reasonable value of 2 to 3, 4 million, and looking for the improvement to come up. So we either go for the promise and improvement, or we go for the experience that's kind of down on your luck.
Well, I think that kind of question about was he brought in as number 1, or did he accidentally become the number 1? I don't think
he's number 1.
Yeah, I'm kind of siding with McGinty from the way that I remember it. It was brought in as a number 1, but I don't think that justifies or kills the argument. For me, Gordon was the number 1 unsung hero. for me, he's the goalkeeper that I would put in that team for me. But the question of was he the accidental number one or the deliberate number one? I don't think that really strengthens or weakens the argument. So I'm with Paddy on Gordon as number one.
Well, okay then. Agree to disagree. Let's move on to the right back then.
Right,
Because we could be here for a while.
I tell you all day, mate, we've spent 25 minutes agreeing that Craig Gordon is the better of the goalkeepers there, the unsung heroes.
I think we'll find that with first comment was an agreement that Zaluska was the definition of an unsung hero, so I'll take the one.
Aye, you must have fucking put that comment on yourself or something. Hey, tell us about today, right? We've got the goalkeepers at the road, something we've been dying to do for a couple of weeks. What is your formation? And then hit us with your full back line.
So we'll go for the full back, and I'd probably be better because we'd be here for all day for individual player sort of thing. So I went for a flat 4-4-2, as I said earlier. There's that many formations over the last 25 years. If I was trying to pigeonhole players who have came in different eras, it would just be a bit more complicated. So a flat 4-4-2. Try and keep it simple. So for me, I've got 3 out of 4 here. I would say fit the definition of unsung hero quite well. The fourth one, he's not an unsung hero. He's generally well regarded, but I was struggling at times, so I've kind of went for it and tried to explain it. So I'll rhyme them off, and I'll give you a quick blurb of why. So at left back, I went for Stephen Mahy. In modern times, we all obviously look at Tierney and Izzy as the kind of the last decade or so as competent quality left backs that we've had over the piece. But for me, Stephen Mahy, he won the league in 97-98. For me, anybody who played in that team, if you weren't Henrik Larsson, basically, you're an unsung hero. He had the league champions twice, I think it was. He got the Scottish Cup and the League Cup 3 times. He won the treble under Martin O'Neill with us as well. I don't know about other people, but you kind of forget that he was here for, 4 or 5 years? And he won the league in those 2 years, winning the treble as well. Stephen Mahy is not an unknown name to us, but he definitely does not get the recognition, I think, that people would generally... Was he a flashy player? No. He actually was probably a bit more famous for getting sent off a couple of times, to be honest.
He was a hard bastard, wasn't he? Mental.
But for me, you don't play in those 2 seasons, win a treble and stop there 10 and have something about you to be praised. So for me, an unsung hero in that sense, especially when you consider the dross we had after that.
So we've got Zaluska and Mahy, right?
Yep. My centre-back pairing, I went with Kelvin Wilson, which for 2 years at Celtic, and remember... In one of his seasons, he went and was playing in that 25 clean sheet record that we had in a league season. Kelvin Wilson was a solid centre-back. He was only here for 2 years. I think he left, went back to Forest. I think we actually got more money from him. Did we? I think so.
He went back for reasons, didn't he?
I think he was homesick and stuff like that.
No,
so all credit to him and fair play.
If I remember right, his wife, when they came up, his wife and kids went back inside.
But he spent 2 years here and he was part of a formidable defence. So for me, Kelvin Wilson, unsung hero, we don't talk about him as much. After Kelvin Wilson, you talk more about Denier and Virgil van Dijk, and then also we move on from there. Another one, kind of in the same breath, is a Cole Touré. Now, a bit unusual maybe, but he came into that season. Let me have. He came in that season, and if we remember in that early part of that season, especially in pre-season, we were horrendous at the back. We were despicable at times. But Cole Touré came in and he helped steady the ship. He soars through the early stages. Even himself, he was a bit shaky at times. But again, that first season under Brendan Rodgers, he played a major part and played a lot of games in an invincible season. And nobody gives him the real credit that he deserves. He then goes on...
Out of curiosity, how many games did he play in that season?
I think he got about 30 overall. Obviously, some sub appearances in there as well, but I think he got quite a large number. I think in the second half of the season, he definitely dipped off getting game time. But in the first half of the season, he got a lot of game time there. Not having Touré, even if he is a beautiful human being.
By the way, this is exactly what we want for the commenters. We want you to come in and say whether you agree or whether you disagree, or throw in your own names.
Let me finish Touré off on one extra point to him as an unsung hero.
Let you finish story off. You'd love to do that, wouldn't you?
As a beautiful human being, yes.
Aye.
He goes on then to be a coach for us as well. And we can all say what we want about Brendan Rodgers taking the entire backroom staff minus Kennedy and Oressa. And maybe he leaves under bad terms if he walks out on Celtic as wrestling, but he's Brendan Rodgers' man. And he came in as an experienced defender, as an invincible before he came and an invincible again after he left. Steadied the ship, was part of the backroom staff who helped us throughout getting basically to a quadruple treble eventually. Definitely, obviously, through a treble. And then at right back, this is...
For an unsung hero, do you remember a famous song involving two of his names?
Well, because it was kind of sung, wasn't it? But still, he doesn't get quite the recognition.
Yeah.
Look at Paddy's reaction when I says it. So, but my right back is one that is definitely not unsung by my standards, but I was really struggling to fit anybody else in. So I went with somebody who kind of more often than not went quietly throughout his tenure. He got 4 league titles, 3 Scottish Cups and 3 League Cups as well in that era of the early 2000s, Jackie McNamara.
Oh my God, Jackie McNamara is your unsung hero.
Did you not hear what I just did? Did you not hear what I just said? I know it's not quite unsung. I know it's not quite unsung. It was a tough one to put in because I was struggling elsewhere. But he goes in as a steady player who
the guy's got his own song for fuck's sake. Do you know what?
You picked Trey Gordon.
Do you know what, mate?
You picked Trey Gordon.
And you picked fucking Lucas Soliskin, played 28 games for the bench. Right?
Anyway, and won 20 of them.
I was actually contemplating putting McNamara in midfield because I don't think he got the recognition that he deserved when he wasn't playing at right back because he played at every single position. But you're fucking mental. You're mental. You're nuts.
His was yours then.
Gav, have you got any to throw in?
Yeah, right, okay, so I guess we'll do it
by the way, Gav, sorry, just before you do, my apologies for butting in. Even the viewers are fucking bamboozled here. Kevin 14, what the fuck? Jackie McNamara is definitely
I said at the start of it.
Well, there's no point putting him in then.
I was struggling elsewhere.
I'm pretty sure you could have picked fucking Paul
I see
Telfer
Alan. I see Alan there is coming up with the Paul Telfer one as well. And for me, Paul Telfer just wasn't good enough to be an unsung hero. Andrews Hinkle's getting a mention as well, and Andrews Hinkle was very close. But for me, his medal and achievements with us just wasn't up there to be a hero.
Right,
what's the word I'm looking for? Is it the antithesis? Is that someone who is the complete opposite, or is it the one who embodies that kind of virtue?
In what respect? You mean Jackie McNamara not being an unsung hero?
I would say the Kolo Toure, having had his own song, McNamara having had his own song, they would be the antithesis of an unsung hero. That's if it's the complete opposite of what it embodies. So yeah, that's where I'm going. But okay, just to give you my defence.
I didn't think we were being that literal to literally have a song, because if we're doing that, there's plenty of players who've had a song who are not heroes. So being unsung and having a heroes, doesn't go hand in hand. And
I think you've got Larsson up front. I genuinely think you've got Henrik Larsson up front. Okay, my back four. Okay, I've got Tosh McKinley left back.
Who's your goalie?
Hi, Craig Gordon.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. Good man.
Tosh McKinley left back. The reason being is that I love the Tommy Burns era, but the kind of the exotic, sexy names like your Andy Tom, Pierre Van Hooijdonk, the Canio Cadet, they got the limelight. But Tosh McKinley, like, you ever seen that kind of stat where Messi, out of all the players who assisted Messi the most, it was Dani Alves? Well, I think for Pierre Van Hooijdonk, it probably would have been Tosh McKinley. The amount of times he just ran down that left flank and had brilliant crosses, pinpoint crosses, and it would always be to Pierre Van Hooijdonk. I just loved his style. He looked like a kind of throwback of like a forgotten age. And I think we actually signed him from Hearts a long time ago. So he was like a kind of mid-90s player. I was a big fan of him. So Tosh McKinley is left back. For right back, I went for Tom Boyd. I know that he could play anywhere, and actually he was very good. He was very good at left back, but Tom Boyd, in 1992...
You're slagging me for unsung heroes, and you're putting Tom Boyd in there.
By the way,
he's
right, because I've picked him, I know.
Yeah, okay.
Are we being that literal about this?
No,
About taking the definition of unsung hero, but literally, did you have a song or not?
You went for McNamara. You went for McNamara.
You went for Tom Boyd. I'm even ignoring Craig Gordon at this point, but you've went for Tom Boyd. Tom Boyd is like the living embodiment of a Mr. Celtic at this point. At this point, I said, as I know people are going to start harking on at Tom.
He never took the limelight because in that day you had people like John Collins and Paul McStay. They were
Tom Boyd took
it. Well, for the era that Tom Boyd played in, he was a classy player, but he played in an era, largely an era of Celtic where it was very, very unsuccessful. It was overshadowed by the dominance of Rangers. And even in the team that we had, you had people like McStay and John Collins, who were the kind of classier names, the more kind of cultural players. They got the limelight. Tom Boyd was the one who was doing the dirty work at the back, but we signed him in '92 for Chelsea, and that swap deal with Cascarino, definitely not unsung. Mate, see, for me, he wasn't one of the kind of classier names. He wasn't one of the names that would you get Tom Boyd at the back of your top?
No, of course you wouldn't, and
No.
not when you got the option of McStay and Collins and stuff like that. Of course you wouldn't. But
Of course.
Tom Boyd is a widely recognised and maybe not worshipped, of course, but he's widely recognised and widely appreciated player of the Celtic era throughout the 90s. He is not unsung.
What about the generation today? The generation today, will they be like singing about Tom Boyd? Do you know what I mean?
The generation of in the next 20 years won't even know who the fuck Kyogo Furuhashi is. But what's your point?
Well, Kyogo has been here for 10 minutes. Tom Boyd was there for over 10 years. Okay, but I think his legacy will be far more lasting than Furuhashi, who already signed for Celtic. I don't know why you're bringing Furuhashi into that.
So in 20 years' time, when there's a bunch of 18-year-olds who do not know who Musama, fucking Dembele is, are we going to just say Dembele was unsung?
No, he's going off a tangent now. See if you look at Tom Boyd, right? See if you look at that '98 team, right? Who's the names that rhyme off your tongue first in defence?
Boyd is
what? No, that's a lie. That's nonsense.
That is not a lie.
The first one you're going to mention wouldn't be Tom Boyd. It would be Mark Reaper, Alan Stubbs, guys like that.
Absolutely not.
Tom Boyd would be one of the last names off of most people's tongues. But Tom Boyd was a fullback that converted to centre back and was literally he was the quiet man in that defence. He was the one that kind of done.
Nah. You're making it out as if Tom Boyd is an unknown quantity in the
No. You can be a known quantity and still be an unsung hero. See if you're fucking Maradona.
You're not an unsung hero.
Wait a minute. Let me finish. Well, if you can be for one season, right? If
you cannot be Maradona and be an unsung
hero.
Wait
a minute. Let me finish. You can be the best. You can be the best right winger for 10 years, but then you play one season and you've shifted to like a defensive midfielder. And you can become the unsung hero by doing the things after the ball that people don't notice.
Yeah, arguably. But you're Maradona in that hypothetical situation, and yet you're not unsung.
I'm just
but of course, you could be a steady striker all your career and be an unsung hero as being a stand-in defender for half a season, a la Chris Sutton. And you would be an unsung hero as a centre back.
Chris Sutton's a known player. Chris Sutton's a hero.
I'm agreeing with you to what you're saying, that you could be known for so much for this and then go do this little position and be unsung hero for that moment.
But
we're talking about Tom Boyd here.
Well,
we're not talking about somebody.
I know that. Well,
we're talking about Tom Boyd at fullback. We're not talking about.
No, I'm talking about Tom Boyd. If you look at the fucking history of Celtic, Tom Boyd isn't one of the first names that rhymes off your tongue.
He's not one of the first, but he's pretty much up there.
He's probably going to be one of the last ones that's rhymed off at the 98 team.
No.
I'm going for Tom Boyd, and you're going to have to deal with it. Moving on, I've got McManus and I've got Reaper as my two centre backs. McManus, he did very, very well for Celtic, but he was not one of the sexy names, you know what I mean? And Mark Reaper, I thought Mark Reaper was a fantastic player. He was signed for West Ham in 1997, and I wouldn't maybe go as far as to call him a Rolls Royce centre back, but he was actually quite close to it for the equivalent of quality that we had back in the day. Brief but hugely successful Celtic career. Injury forced him to retire. I think he settled very well. He was brilliant in the air, really good position, commanding and experienced, tough tackling. He could handle the ball, and he forged a brilliant partnership with Alan Stubbs. He scored the opener in the 3-0 win against Dundee United in the CIS Cup final. I think that was in 1997, in the 98 season. And of course, he went on to actually win the league, stopped the 10. I think, in fact, I think he was that good. If he never had injury problems, then Martin O'Neill would have kept him on. And the back three pairing that we had of Balde, Valgarin, Mjällby, that could have been actually featuring Mark Reaper if he never had the injury problems, because he was a very, very good player.
I would
disagree with that.
No, I'd have to agree with that. Mark Reaper was very close to being one of the names that was going to be in my list, along with guys like Vega and stuff like that. Reaper, everything that Gavin just said about Mark Reaper is spot on, and he was very, very close to being in my team there, so definitely agree there.
But no for an unsung hero though. And don't get me wrong.
I would keep unsung hero status from that sense.
I've got players in my team that are kind of suspect, I know, but if you think back, Mark Reaper was a standout that season. Mark Reaper was on the name of everybody because of how shite our defence was the season before, and then he came in and solidified it. Plus, it was a big money signing for West Ham. Do you know what I mean? I think we signed him for about £3 million or something, £2 million, something like that.
He was, but when we think back to that era, the same reason why I'm putting guys like Stefan Mahi into it, if you think back to that 97-98 season, and definitely Mark Reaper stands out. But since then, when we all talk about great centre-backs and options that we've had, we talk about Van Dijk's, we talk about the Denayer partnership, you even talk about Stephen McManus. Okay, Caldwell, let's not talk about him. But you also talk about Mjällby, Baldy and Valgarin. And after that, like going further back, you start to forget that kind of late 90s period, because the 90s were that bad at times. Mark Reaper can be forgotten about. And for me, he's unsung in modern times, and he deserves a bit more praise. So for me, he goes in it. Yeah, I agree.
I'll go with that then, because that's the point of some of the minds, is that over the course of the period, they have been forgotten about for the class of name. So yeah. I went with a 3-5-2. Right, so I'll go with my five. My wider players are actually wing backs, right? But the left wing back's Tosh McKinley, because tough in the tackle, he broke fucking Henrik Larsson's fucking face first couple of days in. He taught him a lesson, taught him about humility. Don't tackle him. But apart from that, as Gav actually said, stole my thunder. You think about Big Pierre and what he was famous for. He was most famous for his goals, but of his goals, it was his headed goals when he would rise into the air, and the majority of the balls were delivered in by pinpoint Tosh McKinley left peg. He was one of the best at bombing forward, and he did have a wicked delivery back in the days when it was a heavier ball. So Tosh McKinley goes in there for me as an unsung hero, because you think of the famous left backs at Celtic, Tierney, blah 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 blah. B. McKinley doesn't really get a mention. The other wing back, in fact, I'll leave this to last actually. Right, so my three centre backs is Steve McManus. Come up through the youth ranks and posed himself into the game, left foot at centre back. He wasn't the greatest on the ball, but what he lacked in quality, he made up for in heart. The guy that ran through a brick wall for you, his fucking nose was nearly touching one of his ears. That's how much he would stick his face into a boot to try and win the ball. Ended up being the captain. One of my favourite other players, even if he probably isn't for some. Beside him, Kelvin Wilson. Some bastard stole my thunder. Who was that? Was that you, Gav?
Sorry, mate. Not me.
McGinty. First season, didn't really think he was that great. He was brought up because when Lennon left Celtic, he ended up in Nottingham Forest as a player coach. Played with Wilson. Obviously brought him back up to Celtic when he came up. Part of that kind of connection. His first 6 months wasn't that great, but when he started to come out again, he was a fantastic defender. The best thing about Kelvin Wilson was his recovery pace. See if anybody get by them, he was back in a flash, and he was always there to make a last-ditch tackle. And he formed a phenomenal partnership with Effie Ambrose, believe it or not. Ended up in the last 16 of the Champions League against Juventus. We all know how that ended up. But he ended up a fantastic big defender, and it was a shame that, you know, he had those issues, personal reasons where he had to go home. So he could have been a much player for Celtic, but he's actually one of the guys that are respected for saying why he was leaving and why he wanted to leave early, you know, to be with his wife and child. How could you argue with that? And on the other side was Tom Boyd, Mr. Celtic, Mr. Captain, Mr. Dependable. Made his name at fullback, and he was one of the guys that was so good technique-wise. You know, we converted him into a centre back, but he was in back three at times. Martin O'Neill's back three with guys like Yusuf Harn, signed off the back of the Euros. You know, a massive name, Big Mialby, Stubbs. You know, I just think Boyd is one of these guys that doesn't get as much recognition as he deserves, because the guy was a captain, a leader, and a legend at Celtic, and he's definitely forgot about. Certainly in the views of some of the younger people, he's only known a lot now for being the boring commentator on Celtic TV, which is a shame because his quality's got overlooked, and that's the reason why I've added him in.
I think that part has been kind of consigned to Celtic TV.
Aye,
yeah,
which is a shame. Kind of default ambassador duties just put you out there in the media. You're the kind of the old timer name, so we can still hark back to the old days or something. It does feel like he's being used that way, which is a crying shame, because as much as I do not agree that he's an unsung hero, he is still a Celtic legend to me. As you say, captain us through those years and all the rest of it. So for me, before we move on to the midfield, I just want to run through.
I've got one more.
Oh, one more. You're right. One back.
One more. So this is. I'll go five, right? But the two are wing backs on the right hand side. You'll probably disagree with me putting them into this formation and whatever. But
you're going for that?
He is. He's going to go with a guy, isn't he?
No. I'm actually surprised to see if he'd asked me this about fucking 5-6 years ago. I'd have probably stuck it up myself. James Forrest.
Get the fuck out. Who invited this guy?
I've got Forrest in my team. I've got him in midfield.
How is Forrest an unsung hero?
Because right, let me finish. James Forrest, right, and I've been guilty of this, and I think some people are right and sometimes whatever. But the wee guy's been here for best part of 10 years. He's been an important member of the team. He's been part of the Invincibles. He's done this. He's scored goals in Europe. But yet people still say that he's shite. And
I have to disagree with that. He's definitely people say that he's shite. His first few years, 3, 4, 5 going on years, people were still saying that, definitely. But once Dyler acknowledged that the guy was injury prone to fuck and managed to put him on a specialised rehabilitation, recuperation program, whatever it was, he spent like half a year to a season kind of in and out the team trying to get his fitness back up, because he could barely play 90 minutes twice in a week. Once we got him sorted that way after Dyler, Forrest came into the team and then some, and I think after that, especially once Rodgers took over and got the full use of it out of Forrest has been a Celtic hero for most fans. I think you'd be hard pushed to find many who would not say outside of this season, the last 5 years before, that Forrest wasn't a first name on the team sheet sort of player.
Listen, I don't deny that for a second, right? But my point is, in my experience, there's more people that don't like James Forrest than there is people that do like him.
I wouldn't disagree with you any experience, because the players still a few out there. But maybe get better pals.
But that's the reason why I'm adding in guys like Gordon, Tom Boyd, Forrest, and another couple there, because they get overlooked. They don't get the recognition that they deserve. So if you're not getting the recognition, if you say you're a striker and you score 20 goals a season, but people don't like you, then surely to God you're doing something that isn't being recognised, i.e. the total epitome of an unsung hero.
Perhaps, yeah. So before we move on to the midfield, I see that Gavin might have frozen a little bit on his camera there, so we'll see if we'll get him back. But I'm just going to run through what I would consider there's Gavin's on his back again. What I would consider maybe a kind of collective backline, go with a keeper and a back four from what we've all been seeing. I see it under duress, but Craig Gordon's probably going to be the winner out of the three of us for the goalkeeper position. I guess we're then looking at Tosh McKinley. I think we can all probably agree.
Craig Gordon get 2 shouts, is that right? Yeah.
I'm not just going with how many votes, but generally what I feel the three of us have said and probably nodded and agreed to. So Gordon, Tosh McKinley, Kelvin Wilson, Stephen McManus, and then at right back, I'm pained to say Tom Boyd because you both mentioned his name, but I don't think any of us can agree fully on a right back unsung hero here. But I think we could agree with the rest in the 5 positions so far. Of Gordon, Tosh McKinley, Kelvin Wilson, Stephen McManus, and our right back. I don't think we can agree on the right back.
Right, okay. So since Gav joined in last, why don't you start after the midfield, buddy?
Okay, well, again, I'm doing 4-4-2. So for the right wing, do that because we were already speaking about him, James Forrest. And I get why some people might agree and some people might disagree. He's been massively important to Celtic. And but it's just the detractors that he's got. I know that I'm kind of going over old ground here, but another kind of criticism that people level at him, some people do, is that he doesn't have any heart, that he'll shite himself for challenges and stuff like that.
Oh, he does. He does. He does. But
you know, it was actually quite funny. So you know that my dad really likes collecting a lot of Celtic pictures and stuff like that, and like he's got a few rooms, like it's like teaming, like it's absolutely full. And for one of his birthdays, I got him a signed James Forrest picture, and he looked at it and he kind of thought about it. He says, "You know, you're right. The guy's done a lot for Celtic. I'm surprised I don't actually have a picture for him." And I know that doesn't really kind of sum it up as much, but it was just an example of he does get forgotten about sometimes.
I've got a picture of James Forrest here.
Maybe a Lee Griffiths kind of look.
Right, okay. I guess I'll put in one that might have a few of you disagreeing. Right, I've went for left midfielder. I went for Aidan McGeady.
No, totally disagree. No. I'm struggling to allow you to have James Forrest, but I can see why. Aidan McGeady was not unsung. Aidan McGeady was a trickster and was praised to the hilt. It was sold for, I think, a record fee when he went. Yeah, people were frustrated at him because maybe he wasn't doing enough, but he was definitely not unsung. And this I'll allow you because it is a tough position. I struggled most with wingers when I was going through my list. Finding wingers is really tough because we've had so many good wingers that have been so consistent for so long. You look at left wing, even right wing, you're looking combined. Can I get the stuff? Of course you can.
I was actually tempted to go for Bobby Petr. I thought Bobby Petr did very well in the first season for Martin O'Neill. And I remember, in fact, I'm not going to go any further, but no, I went for McGeady. McGeady, he was like our generation, same age as us, and we expected so much for him. I think that obviously he was a Celtic man. It might have been a wee bit different if he was like a Rangers boyhood fan who grew up playing for Celtic, but he was always a Celtic fan. But I think one of the main reasons that people didn't like him was he was a smarmy wee fuck at times. A lot of people didn't like his arrogance. He was an intelligent boy. I think he got like 8 wins at standard grade. He was an intelligent boy. His father was like a math teacher at Holyrood. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he was a smarmy wee guy, and he always answered Gordon Strachan back. We all know about that in the dressing room. He had the ability, although he didn't have the physicality. I think that's the one thing. If he had the physicality combined with the technical ability, then he could have been very, very good in England. But I think that's what stopped him. Yes, he got his 10 million move to Spartak Moscow. Yes, he came back and he played crap against us in that two-legged affair for the qualifiers, I think it was, to get into the Champions League.
Perhaps that makes him an unsung hero for Celtic.
Pardon me?
Perhaps that makes him an unsung hero for Celtic, his performance against us.
Yeah, well, I'm putting in McGeady because that's just who I'm going with. So,
right. Who's the rest of your crowd? Midfield?
I went for Craig Burley and Barry Robson, centre midfield.
Oh, you motherfucker.
Barry Robson was close to being in mine, but I switched him out in favour of somebody else. But yeah,
a lot of people might think Paul Hartley. Paul Hartley could have been in there because him and Barry Robson dovetailed really, really well. And again, it was like Gordon Strachan who both of them. And like Barry Robson, Paul Hartley, and like them playing together, that propelled us towards that title victory. Barry Robson, I think it was a game against Rangers at Parkhead, and he was like a man possessed. And you remember that famous challenge that he put in against Rangers? It was like the first challenge within the first minute, and he elbowed the guy. Barry Robson, I think we all remember what he was like for that season alone. And Craig Burley, was definitely not a Celtic man. He's minging to listen to in the media right now. He works for ESPN. Nobody likes his opinions. But I think everybody's disowned him. England and Scotland fans have disowned him. He played for Chelsea for a long time. But Burley was really, really instrumental in that 97-98 league win for Celtic when we stopped to 10. Aye, so that's it. Burley and Robson, and I've got McGeady and Forrest on the wings.
So I'll rattle through mine quickly. I'll try not to take too much time on this one because I think we've got more to chew on later on. The wingers, as it says, Gavin, really tough. They were the last two positions I filled in, and I will hold my hands up that the two wingers I've got, for me, they don't. They're up there with Jackie McMahon. They don't really count as unsung heroes. But I've had to fit somebody in that isn't Nakamura, Sinclair, McGeady, Jota nowadays, or whoever else has been on the wings that's basically been somewhat worshipped. So on the left wing, I went for somebody, and my explanation for him is that he was kind of hot and cold and at times frustrating more than anything else. But overall, he's now seen as a cult hero. So for me, doesn't really fit it, but I'm struggling. I'm going to go on the left wing with Georgios Samaras. His debut was brilliant. I thought we saw a brilliant goal from him. It actually came onto the right side against Kilmarnock. He collected the ball on the right wing, stretched his legs out, got the space to run, beat his man, cut inside to the middle, and took the shot on his left foot to score on his debut. I think that showed the kind of player he is. We saw the best out of Samaras when he got to play more in Europe, where teams were playing open and expansive football, whereas domestically, a lot of teams start to park the bus against us and provide little to no space for us to run into. So we got frustrated with Samaras. But I think over the piece, he is now a cult hero. But over the piece of his tenure, he was not very looked upon fondly, but he actually came up big quite a lot of the times when we needed him. So for me, a bit of an unsung hero, but a really tough one to try and piece in. Right wing is a bit of a shoehorn here as well. And I eventually went with Sean Maloney. He never quite hit the heights that we all hoped as a Celtic youth product to come through, and we hoped that he was going to go on to great things. We sold him twice. He came back. But I think both times he was at Celtic, he won league titles and cups. And he was just always steady. He was always there to provide good cover and good depth and provide a good outball for us when we needed to. It was really tough for me to pick my wingers, but they're the two I'm going to go with because otherwise I would have picked McGeady myself. You would have looked at I think at one point I even looked at Koki Mizuno and trying to figure out how I could shoehorn him in. I know that's the levels I got to. I was like, every winger worth mentioning is actually a well-known player, so it's kind of hard to pick one.
To be fair, Maloney was actually a decent wide man. Whenever he get converted for this wee midget forward.
Midget up front thing.
Right, so you've got McGee, you've got, who is it again?
Samaras on the left.
Maloney
on my right. And my midfield partner. I'm going to bring up a comment that was mentioned earlier.
You're a 4-4-2, aren't you, McGee?
Going to be a flat 4-4-2.
Right.
There's a comment earlier. I think it might have been Davy Boy. I'm just going to scroll back and see if I can bring this up. Yeah, this one here. Was Morton Vikos a centre-back? No, he was not. He was a midfield come attacking midfielder. And I'm bringing that up because Morton Vikos, again, played in that 97-98 season. And as I said earlier, pretty much anybody, even Craig Burley, who played in that season, who isn't Henrik Larsson, is going to be an unsung hero at some aspect. For me, Morton Vikos, he came in, I think he played, did he play about 5 or 6 seasons? I've got a list somewhere here. He played more seasons than you think. But his first season...
Bear in mind that he was injured for.
His first season was injured. He played a good season in 97-98. I think he got about... Did he get about 30 games that season as well? He done really quite well game times. But then after that, he was injured again, and he got an illness diagnosis, and then he fell off the way, sort of thing with it. Not through his own ability, just his unfortunate health situations there. But for me, he was part of a midfield, played a lot of games that won us the title in that 97-98.
There's a great shout there for Kevin 14.
All-time hard man.
Guys,
Barry Robson's right in there.
Right. Anyway, right. I'll tell you what, Kev. We'll pencil that one down, mate, and we'll let you know when that's going to get shouted out. So,
as Gavin mentioned as well, when he mentioned Barry Robson and the other option is Paul Hartley, and that's who I plucked for. He was 30 when he came to Celtic. He won 2 league titles with us. I think he was only here for a couple of seasons, was he? And for me, he kind of came in, and not many people were too fussed about him signing at the time. His age, coming from Hearts and all the rest of it. But he's a Celtic man through and through. I was actually reading a story, an interview that he done after his time at Celtic, partly talking to his brother on the phone when he was about to sign for a new club, and he phoned his brother to tell him that he's leaving Hearts and he's signing for somebody else. And the thinking was at the time that Hartley was going to sign for Rangers at the time, and his brother cut him off short. Apparently, he just says basically, "Never come back to my house, never phone me again," sort of thing. He's ready to disown him, and he had to be like, he had to basically be like, "No, listen to me, I'm signing for Celtic." Then his brother was greeting down the phone line to him, sort of thing. So I think probably that tells you the mood and feeling at the time. That Hartley wasn't expected to be signing for us. So for me,
if Carlsberg did brothers,
aye. So for me though, Hartley, he probably wasn't expected to do much, but he came in. I don't think he ever captained us at all, even like for one game or anything, did he? But he played like a captain at times. He controlled a midfield. He settled us in.
I think he might have done. There was a period towards the end of Strachan's where the captaincy was kind of getting passed about week in, week out to try and. I remember Stephen Presley was a captain at one point. You know what I mean? And there was a lot of people, but he was another guy that actually done a good job for us. But so that's Sam Rass left, Maloney right, Hartley in the middle with who was it again?
Morton Veghorst
and Paul Hartley. That's decent, right? So obviously I went with a 5-3-2, so my 3 midfielders. As somebody that's actually really, really impressed me this season, I've been a massive critic up to this season as well. But when I look back, you know, when he came in, he was decent in his position. And when I think about it now, he's been kind of shoehorned into a position that he's no asked to play, isn't he? But he's always done it quietly, confidently. Even if he's fucked up, let us down at times, but he's still stayed about, done it. Near Beaton.
Nice.
Near Beaton.
I'll give you that. He's pretty much out of the definition.
He's really, honestly, he's really, really impressed me since he's been back into his natural position this season. It's the same again. He's not a first teamer, but he never shies away. I don't think. And he looks he looks like he's one of these players that's good for the squad. Do you know what I mean? And he's here nearly 10 years. So he's as much as I've fucking been verbally chasing him with an axe down the street or whatever, but he's an unsung hero for me this season.
But for me, in the modern current team, he is probably high in the definition of unsung hero.
As I say, nearly a testimonial and all, do you know what I mean? So that's good on him. I actually felt dirty mentioning this prick's name because he is a prick. He's the prick's prick. He's the ball bag's prick. He's every cunt's prick. Craig Burley. By the way, 1998, 97, 98 season, one of my favourite players in that team. You always remember him. He had the dyed blonde hair, but he was a kind of dynamic box-to-box midfielder. He was always, let's not beat about the bush. He's fucking one of the rotten mob, right? But he never shucked it. He put it all out for Celtic in that season, and he was instrumental. He was one of the best players in that team. But the only reason I've added him in is because he's a fucking ball bag of the highest order, and I think because he is, same again. This is just my logic. People might say, "Shut up, you dick," but because of what he's done for Celtic, how much of an arsehole he's been. The amount of crap that he's come out against us over the years, I think he's out in Dubai or something, doing it for ESPN or Saudi Arabia or something. He's been deported right out the road. That what he did in that season gets forgot about. So, Craig Burley for me, right? And this is another one that I'm going to need to explain. Andy Tom.
I was very close as well. One of my favourite players back in the 90s.
The reason I've said Andy Tom right now, everybody that saw Andy Tom knows that Andy Tom was a beautiful, brilliant player, technically gifted, just excellent on the ball. You know, he scored goals, great technique. But the reason that I'm adding Andy Tom in is because even for such a good player that he was in that team and off his own back, he was always overshadowed by the three amigos, Van Hooijdonk, Cadet and Di Canio. He was always the guy that was in the background. So for me, anything that he did was always overlooked by the fanciness of Cadet, curly hair, scoring the goals, Cadet, Di Canio with the flicks and flicks and big Van Hooijdonk doing his thing. So that's my reason for putting Andy Tom in. So
I would fully give you that one as well, because I would agree whenever people talk about the three amigos and they hark back to how good they were and everything, I always have it in my mind. Actually, I preferred Andy Tom at the time out of the four. I would give you that.
Love to get him on here, by the way.
I think he's got a very, very fascinating backstory, because he got caps for East Germany, and they were obviously not as successful as West Germany. And you had players that he actually played with for his club team, and they defected to the West, which was like a really, really fascinating time. So whenever his club team played in Europe, they would have like the Stasi, you know, the police who would like shadow them and make sure that they wouldn't, you know, go out and get away from their bubble. They always moved in a bubble in Europe, and a very, very fascinating time. That's one of the kind of questions I would love to ask him if I ever got him on a podcast. So for that era, Andy Tom would be my number one to interview.
Well, Andy Tom, if you happen to be a fan of the Jungle Gyms podcast, you've got three guys who absolutely adore and love you for that era. So please, Andy, come on.
McGinty, what do you mean? What do you mean? Of course he is.
He better be. Everybody listens to us.
Right. I believe.
I could take a weekend trip to Berlin and coax him over.
Yeah, battering. Right, who is going to rattle off with the forwards first then? Who wants to go ahead with that?
I'll go if you want.
You go.
McGinty, same player that you went for on the left wing.
Sorry, wait a minute. Sorry, Gav. Sorry. Need to comment on this. Frank Brennan, of course, everybody's allowed opinions.
Oh, mate, I was going to ignore that one.
No, I need to bring this one up, buddy. Hartley was complete pish. Same with that Pat McGinley, complete pish. I don't think Hartley was complete pish. Come on now, that's harsh to put it lightly.
I'm not going to bring any more comments up. I'm reading a couple here already. One from Alan Woods. I'm like, yeah, going to not steal my thunder, Alan.
Right, Gav, back to you, buddy. Sorry.
Samaras McGinty went from the left wing. I'll go for him up front. Yeah, I think he had ability. He always looked that kind of lackadaisical, as if like he wasn't bothered about it. But see, once he started like running, he just got faster and faster. He was like a juggernaut, and he was really important for us in the European games, because whenever we were playing against higher caliber of opposition, we would punt the ball up to Samaras, and his responsibility would be to hold it up and run with it or lay it off to the midfield runners. And it was a tiresome and thankless job. But I thought he did very, very well for us in Europe. Domestically, he'll be remembered for that penalty miss against Alan McGregor at Ibrox. I think if he scored that, he probably would have won a title that season. But he also scored against McGregor at Ibrox in a different Old Firm game.
Sunday.
Pardon me?
Sammy Sunday.
Aye. Look, I thought he was a good player. He could have done better. I thought he was very, very important for us in Europe. And people might disagree. They might say that no, he did get the recognition. They might say that no, he was not an unsung hero. But I've got Samaras, and I've also got Scott McDonald to partner him.
Oh, that's a good shout.
McDonald's one of those borderline ones. I think he's definitely got the recognition, but I don't think, kind of like I'm trying to remember what Paddy's already told me his two player names, and I can't remember who they are, but there's another name.
Scott McDonald.
I'll no steal thunder. Somebody that
Scott McDonald will always be remembered for two reasons. by the Celtic supporters. It'll either be his goal against AC Milan or the goal for Motherwell.
Aye, the helicopter Sunday thing. So you get 2 goals, and I was actually working in a call centre right next door to Ibrox on that day for like Guy TV in Edmondson House. I think that was the name of the call centre, and he scored 2 goals, and the league went to Rangers. But I don't fault him for that. He's a professional footballer, and that's what you're meant to do. It's not his fault that Celtic were pitched that day. We threw it away. It's not we're at fault, not him. I hold nothing against Scott McDonald for that. Maybe that's just because I'm too
exactly. The guy's a professional footballer playing for Motherwell at the time. What do you expect him to do?
Well,
he's going to score goals. That's why we signed him.
I tell you what, I don't give a fuck. If I was a Celtic supporter,
I'm still raging.
Grew up supporting Celtic. If I scored 2 goals, if I scored 1 goal against Celtic that potentially lost in the league, I wouldn't be running away like a wee fucking.
Mate, you're right.
But I can. That's just me. That's just me.
As you said, Paddy, he's going to be remembered for 2 things: either that day with Motherwell, or the day that he might have made it up to all the Celtic fans for that AC Milan goal.
So that's why I'm agreeing with Gav, is because there will be a large section of Celtic supporters that only dislike McDonald for that, because I remember it to this day, and it was actually a player that I really, really liked, but there was people, a large section of people that just could not take him at all because of that Motherwell game. So anything that he would have done would have been overlooked.
I know I'm not probably about to do the worst thing ever on a Celtic fan podcast and probably criticise Celtic fans here. But as we said earlier, with James Forrest and the likes, there's elements of our support who take the initial opinion of James Forrest and can't let that go and just stick by he's crap, he's unfit, he can't last 90 minutes. We still have Tom Rogic. We still hear that Tom Rogic can't last 90 minutes. He's played countless 90 minutes back-to-back for us in the last 4 or 5 years. It's not a true thing. We are digressing quite massively. But for me, I think when it comes to Scott McDonald, you are going to get that crowd that they're just not going to let that go. But for his time at Celtic, he was a brilliant player, absolute brilliant player for his time at Celtic.
The guy in the Celtic jacket.
So, you get Sammy McDonald, is that right?
Yeah, Sammy McDonald up front, mate. That's my full 11.
By the way, that's quite a good balance, that little and large.
I know. I think if you look overall at my team, it looks a very kind of Gordon Strachan type team.
Funny enough, was there no moment, I don't know if anybody can remember this, and maybe I'm badly remembering it, but did McDonald and Samaras not, I don't think they played well together. And I do recall something happening with McDonald in the centre circle. I think he was taking kick-off at half-time or something like that. And he was speaking to somebody else, and it looked like, because, we can all read lips, that he was saying to the other player that wasn't Samaras, that basically, I can't play with him, sort of thing. It was like he's really dissing Samaras, and that's the way it was coming across. It's total conjecture here. I have nothing to back it up apart from my shite memory.
I think I remember that, but I definitely remember the fact that McDonald, when he came in, he was used to playing up front with very good Hesselink, who, for all his faults, he was very, very slow. He was a player that would be able to bring McDonald into the game, and you had that balance a little and large. But when Samaras came in for Man City, he was a player that, even though he liked to call himself a striker, he never played like a traditional number 9. He was always out wide, and he was always trying to run at defence. So he left McDonald himself, whereas Joe Vinegar Castlemilk was opening up the defence for McDonald.
Gorgeous Georges Samaras would play a blinder in the left wing in this current Celtic team. Open, direct, running football in a kind of 4-3-3 that we kind of play now, especially Jota Abada cutting in so much as almost inside forwards. I think Samaras would play a blinder in that position at times.
One unsung hero who I was going to put in, but he's already got a song, and that's Philip Sebo.
Fair play. Just because his name's been mentioned quite a lot in the comments just now, and you've mentioned it yourself, Paddy, I'm going to get my 2 out of the way quickly now, because otherwise people are going to keep mentioning his name and think that I'm just jumping on the bandwagon here. But my two strikers, I'm going to name the first one, is going to be Big Sammy was unplayable at times. I agree with it. Thank you very much. Big Jan Vennegoor of Hesselink is my first pick as an unsung hero for my strike partnership. He was a slow burner at times. It used to take an absolute age to come back from injury and to get up to match sharpness and match speed. You'd have to play him like 4 or 5 games before you'd find the real Jan Vennegoor of Hesselink. But for no other reason is Jan Vennegoor of Hesselink an unsung hero than that winning goal at Tannadice against Dundee United to win us the league in, was it 07-08? For me, that goal alone, he won us that title with that game. So he becomes my unsung hero there. My second striker is, again, somebody from the 97-98 season, and he's definitely not accredited. He scored a goal in that famous St Johnstone win that won us the title as well. He scored us, I'm pretty sure it was the second goal, so it's not Henrik Larsson, Gavin, don't worry, but Harold Bratback. He scored that goal that won us the title, eventually sealed us the title, because I don't think it was quite the winning goal because it was 2-0. But for me, Bratback, looking at his stats when I was researching this earlier on, he actually didn't score many. And I remember when he did score that goal, he hadn't scored many goals at the times, and it was almost like, thank God he's done something sort of thing. But looking at the stats again and remembering how close that title race was, that Magic Zaraski is actually a massive shout there. If you look through the results of that season, there's a 4-0 win against Kilmarnock. And I think he only scored like 10 goals in the entire season for us. And 4 of them came in that 4-0 win against Kilmarnock. He scored all 4 goals. Now, I can't remember the game vividly myself, but if you took away his 4 goals in that Kilmarnock win, that becomes a 0-0 draw. And without that win, we don't win the league. So definitely an unsung hero there.
By the way, can I just say, I was tempted to go for Jakinovski, but I'm just a wee bit too young. I was reading a lot about Jakinovski, but I was a wee bit too young to kind of remember how the fans appreciated him back then. Nowadays, a lot of people don't talk about him, but Jakinovski was another guy that I thought about, as well as Craney. Sorry, Paddy, on you go, mate.
No, I was. You literally just took the words out of my mouth. Obviously, there's a few guys commenting on the side there who are clearly older than us. So obviously, we're trying to go with players that we can vividly remember watching. We're trying not to go through the whole history. If we'd done that, there would have been so many probably better players to pick for. But we're just kind of going with guys for your era. We were watching for young boys. My 2 up front. Number 9, Samaras. Same again, Gav. I was at times I've got baldy patches for fucking watching Georgios Samaras because I'd be ripping my hair out at times. But this was a guy who, on his day, right, and I know this is probably quite a famous fucking unwarranted saying among Celtic supporters, but on his day, Big Samaras was unplayable. He could rampage against any defence and he would get by them. You think back to Sammy Sunday, that was one of the best Celtic games I've ever been at. I think I've said it on one of these fucking pods recently. I was at the stadium that day. I was about 6 rows up for the touchline, for the park. Sorry, Big Samaras went round McGregor and scored. I ended up the front row. I lost a shoe. I lost a watch. I didn't care. It was Big Sammy gave me one of the best days at Ibrox ever. But he's a guy who honestly, I fucking hated him at times. I really did. I hated him as a player. He was so frustrating. He could have been. Strange love the doctor. Samaras could play like Bambi one week, Bambi on ice one week, and then he would be like Superman the next. And he's a player who, even though he's a kind of cult figure amongst the Celtic support, there's surely God there must be a lot more people like me who literally couldn't get by the fact that he was so fucking frustrating at times. But
I changed my opinion 3 times every season with him. I hated him wanting him sold, and 6 months later, I was willing to give him a contract for the rest of his career.
And you look at him again to see when he first came in. He came in on loan for Man City for 6 months. We took up the option to sign him. The first few games, the guy was magnificent. You look at that goal against the first goal against Kilmarnock. I think he scored 2 goals that were kind of roughly similar. The first one he scored was unbelievable, and then like the next week he would be fucking falling on his feet, and then at times like it would take him maybe 5 or 6 games, and then he would have an unbelievable game. Kevin 14 says he's got the worst touch in football sometimes. Aye, absolutely. But when we won the league in his first season, I think, didn't we? And then he had maybe 1 or 2. The next year was Gordon Strachan's last season, and then it went to Mowbray. So within the 2 seasons, he was really poor. But then after that, then he started. I don't know if he maybe grew up or kind of came into himself, but he really started to come onto a game. And I've only kind of realised how much so since he's left, and that I kind of look back at things. You look at Samaras. Samaras was the first player to score in 5 consecutive away European matches for Celtic. You look at that game against Spartak Moscow. He was pivotal in that game. He set up Hooper for the first goal. He won the penalty for the second. He ended up being the captain for Celtic. No, the kind of first chosen captain, but he captained Celtic. He wore the armband. He was the supporters player of the year in 2013. You know, there's so many things that you look back at Samaras and you think, wow, there really was a great player in there. As I say, unplayable at 1 minute, totally shite the next. So I think sometimes, again, with a lot of my players that I've picked, the negatives can outweigh the positives, and the positives don't get looked at. So I mean, so that's why I'm going for Samaras. The other one there is probably one that maybe people will just say right away, you're talking absolute nonsense. But if you look at the history of Celtic strikers, I think this guy is so far behind being spoken about, but yet he should be so much higher up in terms of goal scoring ability and how important he was. And I absolutely loved it. Who?
Chris Killen.
No, we don't mention him. He's a hero.
Sheridan.
No, he's some sort of sex fucking offender or something.
Let's just say that's the first I've heard that. So let's not incriminate the guy or anything.
If you know, I do apologise, but I'm sure I read something like that.
I do apologise.
I'd probably get done for libel or something, slander. Sorry, back to the thing. I think this guy's so much better in terms of his actual quality and the way he gets looked at. Like, for me, mate, Gary Hooper. Absolutely loved Gary Hooper. You look at the amount of goals that he scored, and he was just a natural striker. Other than Robbie Keane, Gary Hooper's the most natural finisher at Celtic. Gary Hooper was the most natural finisher at Celtic since Henrik Larsson.
Yeah. I was very, very close to putting him in before I picked Jan Vennegoor of Hesselink. And I was looking at his stats and everything, and you're 100% correct with what you're saying. But I was trying to find somewhere in his achievements and his stats, looking at his European record for us, and trying to find something that jumped out at me to say, you did more than just score goals. That's what we remember him as. He does score a lot of goals, but he's not talked about in the same breath as your Moussa Dembele's or even Larsson at the time. And I think he's definitely not as good as Larsson. No way. I'm not even going to pretend to put him anywhere near that.
No.
But since Larsson, he was the next natural goal scorer we really had.
After Robbie Keane.
Larsson. Yeah.
Robbie Keane came in and he was just goals.
He's never spoken about, like, people talk about Dembele and Edouard and in the way of we've got somebody since those guys back then, but we forget to mention that Hooper, at the time at Celtic, Hooper was talked about at that time in the same way that we talk about Dembele and Edouard and stuff as being a proven natural goal scorer, and we totally forget that that's what he was at times. And I was looking at everything I could to try and prove that he had something else about him that meant that he's more of an unsung hero for me to kind of justify him being in there. And then it twigged to me that Jan Vennegoor of Hesselink and all the rest of it, so I had to pluck for him. But he was very close, Gary Hooper, to being my team as well. So I'll very much give you that one.
Thank you. And by the way, I was right about Chris Killen. I won't go into details, but he's a wrong'un. Put it that way.
Anyway.
Hold on, what's this one here? Strange Love the Doctor. I'm assuming that's Magic Zarafsky. Magic's hardly mentioned, but he was a better all-rounder than Hooper.
A very, very natural finisher too.
I actually totally forgot about Zarafsky. 100% forgot about him in the last couple of days when I've been researching this. And yeah, he's one to definitely be considered within this topic. Yeah, I don't think it's about longevity, but he definitely didn't stay long enough to have a legacy. If he stays for another 2 seasons and continued that scoring form, he probably would be a legend of some kind.
One Janssen proved that you don't need to be here forever to leave a legacy. Do you know what I mean? One season he was here and he's a legend.
Let's talk about the midfield. We forgot to kind of round up the midfield of some sort of collective. So, what did we all go for again, Gavin?
Right, okay, well, what I'll do is I'll read out my lineup and you guys tell me my most shocking choice. Out of all them, all the 11, tell me my worst choice and we'll go around it like that for a good old heckle. Craig Gordon, Tom Boyd, Mark Reaper, Mick McManus, Tosh McKinley, Forrest, Robson, Burley, McGady, McDonald and Samaras.
Reaper.
The entire team.
Reaper the worst choice because he was never an unsung hero. He was just a good player who
as I say, mate, I just think he was a superstar.
I think the way that McGinty phrased it is whenever you talk about good Celtic defenders, you're going to talk about Van Dijk, you're going to talk about the people that played under Martin O'Neill. Mark Reaper is an afterthought.
Like you said earlier though, Paddy, you could be hypothetically Ronaldinho or Maradona playing in that kind of wide areas and being the fancy trickster, but for 6 months you could play defensive mid, unexpectedly be actually quite good there and save your team in the final, win a game for your team in the final sort of thing, and do magic in that position, and you'd be an unsung hero for that position for that period of time. But Ronaldinho and Maradona wouldn't be an unsung hero on the piece because they're fucking legends. When it comes to Mark Reaper, I'm totally bending this analogy here to madness, but he signed as a quality centre back, and he was, but he's almost forgotten about, and he done the job very well, and he's not talked about in the same breath as other centre backs. So for me, he is unsung. You can be a Rolls Royce of a defender, a quality player, and just be forgotten about at times.
Right, okay, well, as I say, we've all got different reasons for disagreeing, I suppose. But if anybody that's commenting, if you guys want to obviously kind of maybe pick the best player for each one of your teams when we're saying them out, but also give us your best player for your unsung 11, and we'll get them up so that everybody can see what you're saying. So, that's obviously Kevin 14 saying Paul Elliott.
Yeah, it was a brilliant player. A wee bit too early for us, but from the videos that I've watched, when Rangers were buying all the good England internationals, we brought up Paul Elliott around about that time, and Elliott was one of our best players in that era.
I agree with Frank there, just backing up the. We can talk about him in the same sentence as the King of Kings, the same way we talk about Dembele in the same sentences as him, but nobody's comparing the two. They're not even on the same stratosphere.
Not even close. But it just that just kind of reaffirms, what I was saying.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad people are picking up.
Since Larson left, you brought in Robbie Keane for 5 months on loan. He was naturally one of the most instinctive strikers that we had since Larson. And then obviously Robbie Keane after Robbie Keane, it was super for me. The guy was magnificent. Right, so McGinty, what was your team again?
So I went for quickly Zalucia in goals, Jackie McNamara right back, Kelvin Wilson, Cole Turi, Stefan Mahe, Morton Vikos, Paul Hartley, Samaras on the left, Sean Maloney on the right, front partnership of Jan Vennig of Hesselink and Harold Brackback. By the way, it's a Unsung Hero 11. I do not expect that to win a league title. It's not going to win a league title. I know that. Tumbleweed go past this.
Zaluska, no, I wouldn't even be anywhere near fucking unsung substitutes. Bench, McNamara, I think you're completely insane.
For me, McNamara, he really isn't unsung. He's, but then neither's Tom Boyd. But neither's Tom Boyd.
Aye, well, I suppose like I say, I was contemplating putting McNamara in, but when McNamara played at right back for Celtic, he was young, he was dynamic, he was exciting. I think where McNamara would have been an unsung hero is when he was asked to go and play numerous different positions. Like, there's Frank Brennan. Yes, you did hear Kelvin Wilson's name on mine as well, mate. McNamara when he played midfield and he was a utility man and asked to play anywhere else. Aye, he was kind of forgotten about in that sense, but aye. Listen, Big Mahi was a good shout because he was just a fucking crackpot, wasn't he? Absolutely.
Mahi looks so fresh, he slowed in.
Right, mine's was Gav, who was your favourite for McGinty's team?
Zaluska for comedy value.
Thanks.
There's Frank Brennan again. Right, Frank, why don't you tell us why you're so shocked that Kelvin Wilson's name being mentioned? Right, my lineup was Gordon, McManus, Wilson, Kelvin Wilson, Tom Boyd, McKinley and Forrest as wing backs, Beaton, Burley and Tom in the midfield, and Sam and Aston Hooper up front.
I think Tom and Beaton are absolutely fantastic shouts. I'm actually disappointed I missed Andy Tom out because he's, as I said earlier, he's one of my favourite players outside. In fact, including the three amigos from that season, he is my favourite player, including them. And Neil Beaton is an absolute brilliant shout for the definition of an unsung hero of current players. Absolute brilliant shout.
Yeah, Paddy,
Kevin, I'm the manager. My team.
The award for being kind of ingenuous, creative.
You're breaking up a wee bit there, Gav, mate.
Shouts, mate.
You broke up there.
Sorry?
You broke up there.
All right. Sorry. What I was going to say is I would give you the nod for tonight for being most creative with Beaton and Andy Tom. Very, very good shouts.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Right, here's a question there. The man in the green jacket, the man from Del Monte. Where are we? Kevin 14. Great question, mate. Who's the managers?
Me. I am. It's my team.
That's even worse than fucking Zaluska.
I've played a lot of Football Manager. It's fine. I can do this. Somebody's mentioned Joe Venglos. Is it you and Boy Martin there? That's actually top of the head. Only just thought about it because Kevin's mentioned the brilliant question. Actually, Joe Venglos is actually a good shout. Without thinking too hard about it, that's a good shout.
For most unsung manager, I would go for Gordon Strachan.
Arguably, yeah. As I said earlier, it's a split support at times when people say that they can respect him enough that we done the Champions League last 16 twice, won as the league titles and stuff. But generally, I think a lot of people, myself included, just were not happy with the style of football and the manner that we went about playing the game. And in fact, the manner we went about starting a game of football, it just was not impressive at all. But the results were there at times. So Strachan's a good shout as well, wasn't there?
Strachan was the same. I know he was hated before he came to Celtic because his Aberdeen days by older sections of the support, which is fair enough. That's understandable. Came in here, had to follow Martin O'Neill. He had to do it by getting rid of the squad basically because Lawwell was on the downturn. Sorry. So even though you had the early setback for Bratislava, which is one of the worst defeats ever in our history. He won the league. He won 3 in a row. Got his fucking back-to-back last 16 in the Champions League. I mean, so with guys like fucking Scott McDonald and Paul Hartley. So he's definitely he's better. He's better than what a lot of people say he is. I'm kind of thinking for a manager. I'm thinking maybe Ronnie Dylan. Because
he's respected enough, I think, by the vast majority of fans. I don't think anybody dislikes him as a standard manager, but I think we all appreciate that he's played out his depth at the time. But personally, I think a lot of things went against him out of his control. But
just getting back to the unsung hero thing again, there's a few comments there coming up saying Lennon, Wim Jansen. Wim Jansen not an unsung hero. By no stretch of your imagination is he an unsung hero. He is a legend. He's still a statue outside. Lennon is a hero, I know, even if last season was a massive blip on it. He done incredibly before that. But you look at Ronnie Dyler, and Ronnie Dyler was the kind of quiet man. And even though his tenure didn't end well, he put every single kind of building block in place for Brendan Rodgers to walk in.
100%, and I do not hear that enough.
Success.
Yeah, everything that Dyler done, high pressing football, possession based football, fast flowing football, tempo football, 24/7 athlete, dietary needs, nutritionist, and all this stuff Dyler brought into the club initially is exactly the kind of manager that Brendan Rodgers was. Brendan Rodgers just had the name behind him and the power to push forward with it properly. Kind of like where you see Ange just now is very much in a similar mold to the likes of Pep Guardiola and even a little bit of Jurgen Klopp kind of side of football. There's the creme de la creme of it, and then there's maybe not quite the top end. Now, Ange is a lot more successful initially than what Ronnie Dyler would be, but I'm just trying to compare like the named manager to the lesser named manager that we know. There can be very much good similarities between the two.
By the way, strange off the doctor, I think the two people that you couldn't think of were
I think Gav's asking
and
the two
Garrison.
Huge Eastern European.
I think it would be Yuri Yarczyk, yeah.
And Reitman, don't know who that is either. Frank Brennan, right, mate, listen, loving the comments tonight, guys. Frank, thanks very much for your comments, buddy. But this one here is, in my humble opinion, absolute nonsense. Kelvin Wilson wasn't slow. At the start, he was when he first came in, he was kind of ponderous. I'll give you that, but he grew into a cracking defender, and you look at the Barcelona game, he was magnificent in that game, and he certainly was not slow. But listen, the guy, everybody in the comments, he's been commenting all night. There's some brilliant suggestions. Great chat tonight. Again, if he's agree with anything, disagree with anything, put them into the chat and we'll have a look at them after the video finishes. But I think we're going to wrap up the other night, guys. That's been
I think we've all but almost lost Gavin at this point, and I think now's probably a nice time to wrap this up.
What you saying, Gav?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my internet.
Just the way of the world. Listen, everybody that's been watching, thank you so much for getting involved and bringing in conversation. We really love it, especially when we're doing a kind of off-topic episode like this. So thanks very much. So we're going to wrap it up like that. Jump onto the YouTube channel. Give a wee subscribe if you haven't done. Ring the wee bell, get notifications, all that. We're on Spotify. If you want to listen, we're taking the dog for a walk. On Twitter, at Jungle Gyms Pod. Davy Boy Celtic, are you back on after Boda? I think we probably will be back on to do a post-match, mate. So,
just as Davy brings it up, and just before we do sign off, are we open to the discussion that we've had previously, Paddy, about?
Aye, on you go.
Aye, cool. So we're definitely going to be back after the Bodo Glimt game. There'll be a post-match review, but leading up into a build-up for the game and during game, we're looking to maybe try and do something a bit different that might be on a different platform. So keep in touch with us on the likes of Twitter and stuff. We'll keep you posted. There may be something happening, kind of like an in-game commentary. Also, we can't show the games or anything, but us watching the game, talking about it, having a bit of chat, a bit of banter with the lads, get the comments going through, sort of thing. We'll keep you in touch on how that's going to operate. We've not got everything fully cemented, but yeah, keep that going somehow.
Perfect. So that'll do us for the night. Everybody, thanks very much.
Guys, loved it tonight.
Alan Woods, I know somebody else brought that up earlier on as well. I can't mind exactly who. My apologies. Aye, do the hard man 11 soon. We will, and we're going to try and do wee topics like this every now and again because it changes up a bit, isn't it, for just everybody talking about the same old fucking thing. So, so we'll see you on Thursday night for the post match after Bodo. Hopefully, it's a good result. Don't know, but hey ho.
All the best, lads.
So for McGinty, Gavin, and myself, good night.